have not supported the people when you told them back in January, go and take your institutions, help is on the way.
Wow. Shahram Hadian, TILministry.com, TILministry.com. And of course, we'll be following the primaries tomorrow in key states like Wisconsin and Minnesota. We'll be live tomorrow night to bring you the results. 7:30 Central, Brandon House Live tomorrow night with lots of guests. Shahram will probably check in. I know Dan Eastman's going to check in, Annie Cyrus, and many more. And we'll be watching the race with Mike Lindell and Miss Hong there in Wisconsin and many others. All right. As always, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. May God save America. Take care.
You are watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research,
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
Of Hormuz, there are questions about what comes next, and the Iranians are starting to make new demands. Iran's Supreme National Security Council issued a fresh statement this weekend calling for the United States to permanently end the war and compensate Iran for damages before the strait would reopen. This does come as Iran's foreign minister says even if a deal is reached, it doesn't necessarily mean the strait will stay open.
We have been discussing the temporary route, and we are very close to reaching a conclusion. Work is being carried out based on the maps of this route. Prepared by the armed forces, negotiations have taken place between the navies of the two countries, and the details are being finalized. I believe we will be able to conclude these negotiations very soon.
Conversations about the strait come as the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports remains in effect, costing the regime hundreds of millions of dollars each day. Vice President J.D. Vance told Fox News that U.S. pressure on Iran will continue.
They're hurting in a big way. They want this thing to be over. The question is whether their system is able to give the things that are necessary for us to be happy, for us to feel like we've gotten what we need out of this particular engagement. That is still to be determined, but I do think that we've made some progress over the last few days.
With talks ongoing, Iranian proxies remain active. The Yemen-based Houthis launched a new attack on Saudi oil refineries early this morning. The Houthis have also launched several other attacks in the...
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. So we've just seen the latest on the Iran front, folks. Once again, Washington's civilian leadership is squabbling, well, in the media too, while deep into conflict. And our readiness, our warriors, and our trust in the chain of command take the hit. Why? Because of the endless ongoing attacks on the commander-in-chief and the strategy, instead of deciding, hey, politics stops at the water's edge, like is an American tradition, and working together to get this thing won. But this isn't new. From the endless proxy fights to decisions that hollowed out the force at home, the people in suits keep sending the people in uniform into harm's way and too often treating them as expendable when they push back. My guest today lived that reality. John Frankman is a former Army captain and Green Beret with 7th Special Forces Group. Before putting on the uniform, he spent 4 years in Catholic seminary studying for the priesthood with the goal of becoming a chaplain until he discerned God had a different mission for him. And when the COVID vaccine mandate hit in what was then the Department of Defense, John refused what he and many others saw as an unlawful and immoral order. And on July 1st, 2023, he voluntarily separated rather than compromise. And he didn't go quietly either. He's a signer of the Declaration of Military Accountability, as am I, and proud to have joined him in that. And he's been fighting ever since for the thousands forced out and the readiness that was destroyed. And today, he's a candidate for Congress in Florida's 1st district. You know that district. It's the one with more military members and veterans than any other in the country. I think it was Congressman Matt Gaetz's district at one point. He's running as a fighter for faith, freedom, and Florida first, medical freedom, closed borders, real accountability, and America first leadership that puts the force and the Constitution ahead of everything else. John knows what happens when civilian leaders get it wrong. He's here to talk about how we fix it. John, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show.
Thanks so much thanks for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Well, this is More War Monday, so we always review one of the current combat operations. That's where the clip from the Iran war comes in partially. But I just wanted, as a congressman, had you been in office, and I know this is a hypothetical, but it's based on reality, if you were faced with what Congress was faced with going into this current war, how would you have approached that?
So I would have, and the one thing that you don't have access to as a civilian is the intelligence of what actually is happening in the battlefield. So you never have that perfect picture, and you hope that the leadership at the top that makes the decisions has that information. But my thought process is that in June of 2025, when we had the bunker busters and we were told that we completely obliterated, destroyed, some kind of adjective of that, their nuclear program, I thought, well, hey, it's going to take decades for them to rebuild what they've already done. So then when we continued the aggressive operations, the offensive operations against Iran earlier this year, I had great concerns, and my concerns were raised when Joe Kent was, chose to resign from his position. So my thought process on this whole Iran war is I don't think that they are an imminent threat to our country, to our existence right now. That's not negating that they are not our friend. They have been having proxy attacks on Americans for decades and decades, over 40 years. But as far as just the threat of our country, our existence, I don't think they have that kind of capacity. So I don't think we should be involved in the capacity that we are right now and should be looking at some kind of an off-ramp. That's my thought process on it.
Well, yeah, the president's looking for an off-ramp. I have a slightly different view. I see the potential of them getting a nuclear weapon is a direct threat to the United States. And I don't have the intel that President Trump had, like you said, anything. And that's what he was being told too. But as far as the war itself and how it's been conducted, I think it's been conducted well. And this president is the president of peace. So from that perspective, you just said that you agree that he should be looking for some kind of off-ramp. What does that look like, I guess, is from your perspective?
At this point, I don't even know. It's such a complex thing, and you don't even know who you're dealing with because we've killed so many layers of Iranian leadership, right? But I think it gets to a position where, the Strait of Hormuz is open, where the oil can flow freely. We're sure that their nuclear program is just not existent, which I think that we had that guarantee the year before. At some point, we have to ask, well, what was the information that we had that last year? If we were told that the nuclear program was destroyed, at least it's going to take decades to rebuild, then what changed in the intel? That would be kind of the question there. So get to where you can get troops out of the area, at least directly. You get the ships out of the area, you open the strait up. Maybe you just use whatever missiles are necessary if Iranian ships are blocking the strait. I'm sure that they can do different drone attacks from the shores, and that's completely changed warfare, which has made it more complex. But my thought process with Iran is obviously if they have aggression, you need to fight back. I had Green Berets and other soft members reaching out to me during the Biden years where they were basically just bait. They were left in Syria or some other surrounding country. They would get fired on. The rules of engagement were such that they basically had to be shot and killed in order to fight back. That's not right. I think every missile they send at us, we send 10, 20 back. And I think that's the level of aggression that we should have in order to kind of play whack-a-mole, because if you think you're going to fix the Middle East, it's just not going to happen, but you can certainly try to mitigate a lot of the different difficulties that you have.
Yeah, I think you're right. Those two things, that they can't block the Strait, which really we don't get oil out of it anymore to any great extent, but it does affect the market and the prices everywhere, especially gasoline prices, even here. And then the nuclear piece. We got to have those two things be successful. We can't rely on some fuzzy intel. And I don't know if the intel last year was fuzzy or not, or they actually said, "Hey, we think we got it figured out, and here's where we're at." But it, as you know, intel doesn't work that way. So you're in this unique district, and I know you've been campaigning hard. I follow your efforts and everything on social media. What are the veterans and military members that you're talking to that you're asking to vote for you? What are they telling you about this?
I mean, with Iran, it's just kind of mixed. It's not necessarily the biggest topic that they're all discussing. I mean, for them, they're more concerned about their VA healthcare, getting the benefits that they need. The nearest hospital for us is in Biloxi, and that's hours outside the district, and they only serve 20,000 veterans there. But we have two clinics here. One serves 38,000, and that's only a clinic in Pensacola. Another about 30,000. That's in Eglin Air Force Base area. And we have about 90,000 veterans who are enrolled in healthcare here, and they wonder, why do they have to travel so far for a hospital? What do they need to do to get enrolled? Other issues such as that. So those are some of the concerns. And just from the service members I know, they're just great people. They'll do what they're told to do, but just certainly want to make sure that if their lives are put at risk, there has to be a clear end state. And right now, I just don't think there's that clear end state for pushing our service members into harm's way.
Yeah. So in that district, then you're in bad need of really effective, streamlined community care. Then,
absolutely, yes. I mean, there's just so many veterans here, 5 military bases, and one of the complaints that I have received multiple times from people with the current congressman. So Matt Gaetz was the previous congressman here, and he's an example of a civilian congressman who can do very well with the military. I've known Matt Gaetz on many occasions. I know many of his members of his staff. He had multiple veterans on his staff. Current representative didn't have a veteran on his staff until I challenged him in the primary almost a year later. That's led to many people reaching out for help, not getting it, maybe getting ignored, not getting the help they need. So there just needs to be effective constituent services, and that's something that doesn't cost you any money. I mean, it costs you money in your budget with who you can hire on, but you don't need any votes. You don't need to negotiate with people in DC. That's just have the right people, personnel being policy in office and position right there. So that's one of the concerns. I have other guys who obviously PTSD is always a huge thing. Folks have been very happy when I've expressed my interest in making Ibogaine and hyperbaric chambers available to them, different experimental drugs that I know a number of Green Berets who've gone to Central South America for that treatment, and they've come back. They've broken bad habits. They don't really have PTSD. They're kind of calm. And if that's something that a service member is open to, and given the number of suicides, losing more people to suicide by many numbers during the war in Afghanistan, Iraq, then I think that's something that we need to really focus on.
Yeah, I was pleased to see the Ibogaine program be approved by the president. And this Take Care of America's Veterans Act, personally, I support it. And everything, but I see there's a lot of opposition. Are you hearing from folks about that act? Because one of its good parts is that I think it approves hyperbaric oxygen chambers, and it makes community care actually work the way it was originally intended by President Trump.
No, I've heard that from a couple of folks, and I'd be in favor of many of the efforts that Congress is pushing forward for, or that are being called for with regards to veterans, whether it's the Veteran Bill of Rights that our friend in Veteran Action is pushing forward, whether it's the Richard Starr Act to make sure that you can get your VA pay and also your retirement pay at the same time. Our service members are veterans. They're the ones that maintain our freedom. So we have a duty and an obligation. This isn't something that we're giving them as a reward. It's something that they earned. So we need to make sure that they get the care that they earned from their time in service. And there's very few people who serve within our country. So we need to make sure that they're taken care of. And representing, God willing, the most veteran densely populated district in the country with 5 major bases, veterans will never be the largest contingent in any particular place, but where they are the greatest contingent, I think they deserve a veteran and someone who's going to fight for them and for their rights.
Yeah, and that gets me to, we're almost done with this first segment, but and maybe this will bleed over the second one a little bit. So talk about your specific platform and why you're running against this incumbent. It's a big deal to challenge an incumbent.
Sure. And, I got in politics because I was forced out for not getting the COVID shot. It was while I was advocating for service members on the Hill that I realized that most members of Congress are pretty awful and they're not getting anything done. The Republicans had the majority when I was advocating. There were hearings that they could call for. They didn't do that. And I ran in the last election when Matt Gaetz was picked up for Attorney General. I dropped out when President Trump endorsed Jimmy Patronis, who I'm challenging. But over the last 2 years or a year and a half, what we've seen is Republicans have the House, they have the Senate. It's been one of the least productive sessions in Congress for decades. We're not getting any lasting conservative victories. The deficit is still going up, and we're just squandering this opportunity. And it's pretty clear that you can't just have a Republican majority. That's not the victory in itself. The victory is actually pushing through those conservative policies that the party stands for, that they run on, and particularly with Jimmy Patronis. It's kind of like you're neither hot nor cold, so I'll spit you out. I think he's much more concerned about doing what the establishment wants than representing the conservative values of this district. One, he doesn't live within the district itself, and I think you should love the place enough to live in it, to represent it. So those are just some of the concerns and some of the ways he votes, saying he wants to move on past the Epstein files, voting to cover up sexual misconduct reports against members of Congress, voting to continue FISA, which has been used to spy against Americans. This is the most conservative district in the state. I think we need someone who's going to squeeze every ounce of red out of it, not someone who's going to make Mike Johnson's life easier. I think we need people who are going to convince the next generation of Republicans to vote Republican, or people to kind of convert in that way. And I just don't see him as being someone who's going to really inspire in that way. I think more just a placeholder who's being rewarded for being a good boy.
Yeah. Well, we got to take a break, John. When we come back, we'll see a clip. It's going to be orienting on Ukraine, but the segment's really about the defense budget, the Department of War budget debate that's happening right now. We'll be right back with John Franklin, candidate for Florida's Congressional District 1 in the Republican primary.
At a certain age, you stop chasing younger. You start protecting what helps you feel steady, strong, and well. Your body's collagen matters. It supports the structure of your skin, joints, and connective tissue. But as the years go by, your body needs more support from the inside. That's where Bella Grace Elixir comes in. Bella Grace Elixir combines Verisol collagen, the world's most clinically proven collagen, with Asteryl astaxanthin and cat's claw in a proprietary blend designed to help support the processes that reconstruct collagen, while also offering antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. And this isn't just for women. It's for men and women who want to age with more confidence, more care, and a daily wellness routine that supports the body from within. One simple elixir, thoughtfully formulated for whole body wellness. Take care of the body that has carried you this far. Order Bella Grace Elixir today at melissahousebg.com.
What we see is Russia has intensified usage of the ballistic missiles at their overnight attacks. And because Ukraine doesn't have enough of Patriot missile systems, interceptors, to take those ballistic missiles down, people die. Unfortunately, over the last couple of weeks, we see that most of ballistic missiles hit the target simply because of the amount of them and simply because we do not have the ammunition for the Patriot missile systems. The terrible situation that is happening is that being under the sanctions for so many years, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are able to manufacture more ballistic missiles than the Western world is willing to give Ukraine interceptors. And we are right now at mercy of the countries that possess the interceptors and that are not at war, because it would take 3 to 5 years for us to manufacture the interceptors ourselves.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday. My guest is former Green Beret U.S. Army Captain John Franklin, who's a candidate for Florida's District 1 in U.S. Congress in the Republican primary. And that's the district with the most military and veterans of any district in the United States of America. And John, I just wanted dive over into budget, the Department of War's budget and foreign policy, and get your policy platform positions out on those things. And the Ukraine clip there highlights one of the concerns that I know you and I talked about on my show previously, and you probably heard me talk about with every guest in the past 5 years, and that is that we shouldn't be getting into a fight and acting like we're in total war, not from an armed forces perspective, but from a logistics perspective, ammo perspective, intelligence perspective, and throw everything at a lost cause over in Ukraine, which we know they have no ability to defeat the Russians or even move them really off of any of their territory that they have. And the speaker there was Ukrainian and highlighting that they don't have any ammunition. And this is recent. And they want more from those of us out here. And this is what I talked about. And you've talked about before is that, well, what if America needs their ammo for America first? We shouldn't be throwing our stuff down a rat hole in a place like Ukraine when they're not even a NATO ally and everything. So that's the highlight situation, and it's happening exactly as we predicted. We're in a fight now where we need our own weapons and ammunition, and these people are wanting us to give them ours and want to get licensing to be able to build the things in their country, and that gets me to the budget issue. There's some things in the current NDAA that people are concerned about. Licensing Ukraine to build Patriot missiles is one of them. What's your take on this current debate that's happening with the National Defense Authorization Act, and how would you approach it?
Yeah, I mean, we need to first and foremost make sure that our military is prepared, having the strong military piece through strength, and having the most prepared, ready force possible so that no nation would want to mess with us, period. But it does mean using those resources to protect America and America's interests. And while the election was happening for 2024, the thought process was not another dime to Ukraine. We don't want to get involved in something that can turn into a World War III or escalate beyond our own capacity to defend. We've also been hearing about how NATO needs to step it up. And I think we need to pull completely out of Ukraine, stop giving them any funding whatsoever. If they were that large of an existential crisis or threat to Ukraine to Europe, then Europe needs to step it up. They need to get involved. They need to be spending the money. We need to be focusing on China. Now, I think our biggest existential crisis period is the $40 trillion in debt. That means that every man, woman, and child would have to pay $118,000 to the federal government if we were going to pay that off. And that could lead to the collapse of our nation. So regardless of whatever other forces are out there, if we have this deficit, that's the biggest threat. After that, we need to be focusing on China, and we're working on making sure we have enough missiles, interceptors, all those things with regard to China. Now, if it can be a lucrative situation where Ukraine wants to buy missiles from us, if there are certain partnerships where, we know they won't use it against us, our allies, our interests, fine, sell whatever. But for us to continue to give them money and get involved at a lost cause, one of the just war theory principles is don't get involved, don't fight if you can't win, because you're actually just going to lead to more destruction, damage for yourself, for your partners, etc. So they've had time to negotiate. They need to figure out what they're going to do or look to other allies, because we've been far too generous and we have enough problems of our own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was glad to see the current Trump administration's new national defense strategy put the number one priority on Western Hemisphere defense while turning towards deterring China and the Indo-Pacific. So it's official now. Do we see that happening in this budget that's going through the process now?
Yeah, I mean, I just see the large number of 1.5 trillion, and I didn't quite get the reasoning for it. I mean, until we pass actually, an audit, it's a little bit hard to justify for the American taxpayer to really increase it to a large extent. There certainly are things that need upgrades, ships, our drone program, things of that nature. I know a lot of bases, but I think one of the bigger way to make that happen is if you cut out some of the oligopolies, some of those large corporations that sort of form the military industrial complex, and make it where if someone can come up with a cheaper, faster, more creative solution with less bureaucracy, those tax dollars and that money can go a whole lot further. And that's a lot of regulatory changes that has to happen with the procurement process within the military. And I know when Gates was here, he would complain often about having these millions and millions of dollars planes that just don't work, but you have to go to a particular person so they keep ripping you off, make money off of you. I think we need to just make sure it's streamlined in the sense that everything we pay for is worth it, and get back to our capitalist free market system of competition with the defense industrial base.
Yeah. Where do you see should the priority be on recreating the manufacturing base so that we don't have to rely on foreign parts and those kind of things? I mean, there's a story out this morning that the UK's autonomous boats were reporting data to the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Liberation Army, in real time during operations because of Chinese chips, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I think that shipbuilding is a huge piece of it. I think that's where we've fallen behind, and just in our own manufacturing. So I think if we focus on bringing a lot more, even if it's not military manufacturing back to the United States, rather than having it, the only thing we're exporting right now is money, and we're just printing, money. And that's kind of the problem with this fiat money system that we have. And eventually, as people are getting off the dollar, that's not going to work anymore. So I think if we just focus on the economy, and there's 4 different elements of power. There's diplomacy, information, military, economy. So if we can focus on some of those other ones, especially that, what made us so effective in World War II is we were able to come to the table when we decided to. We were able to take the car manufacturers and other manufacturers and put it all towards the military. Let's just focus on getting our technology up, our manufacturing up in so many different sectors. I think with this particular focus right now on drones and ships, I know in Pensacola, we already have so many veterans, so many bases. There's that possibility of having shipbuilding Pensacola. I think that's a place where we could bring some federal dollars down to get some in-house shipbuilding going. But those would be some of the priorities I would like to look at.
Yeah, glad to hear that. Saronic just announced, I think yesterday, they're going to do their testing of their new 220-foot small container ship that's autonomous right here in Gulfport, Mississippi, where I live. So we're excited about that, getting more use of our port system. I think there should be at least 3 new large shipyards created along the Gulf Coast in Florida and Mississippi for sure.
Yep.
So I look forward to seeing your work on that when you win.
God willing, and the best place in the world, the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Gulf of America, I might add.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I saw, speaking of new manufacturers and getting away from the defense primes, the Palmer Luckey's company, Anduril, said they're going to do their first year of production on this low-cost cruise missile, the LCCM, and produce about 7,000 of them. Relatively speaking, the defense prime that produces our cruise missile can't make 900 in a year. So that's good news, right?
Absolutely. And we have to look at, how drones have just absolutely changed the battlefield. And it's not just a measure of what's the most effective weapon, what's the most dangerous, it's what's the most cost effective. And if you have drones that can destroy millions of dollars a ship and they only cost tens of thousands of dollars, well, eventually that's going to be the new attrition. And we don't have just endless, limitless money to spend. So we need to be very much allowing for just our creativity, protecting our technology, our patents, et cetera, from any kind of Chinese, stealing, robbing, to get to the most creative, cost-effective way of using technology in order to bring it towards warfare, to just maintain that, be the global hegemon, be the most powerful nation in the world that no one wants to mess with.
Yeah, that's deterrence. That's how the most effective way of not getting into endless wars, right? Is to be the deterrent against all comers. When you look at the budget across the board beyond just national security, what do you see as the ways that you can bring to the table to help remove that $40 trillion in debt, which is an existential crisis?
Yeah, you need to get to one single subject spending bills. And in many ways, I was very blessed that Matt Gaetz was my congressman and I was able to really listen to a lot of what he said. But really getting to those single subject spending bills is a huge thing. When you do the omnibus bills, that just continues to drive the budget up. We're still spending at the Biden era level of spending. So you nail that down, that gets a lot of the fat out. I'm a big believer in the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment says that anything not relegated specifically and explicitly to the federal government belongs to the state level. So I think you bring those things down to the state level that our Constitution doesn't explicitly stay. So that easy one is education. Get rid of the Department of Education. Maybe you get rid of a bunch of the different law enforcement agencies and just focused on just one, and then having branches of that to kind of streamline it. You could probably shrink the intelligence space, because why do we have so many intelligence agencies when they're all going to compete with each other and want to get the head start on the other, and that might prevent some information sharing. But just whenever you have more bureaucracy, you have more money spent. An easy one is obviously stopping foreign funding. If you're a household of five, and we went with a $118,000 deficit, if you're over $500,000 in debt, you're not giving money down the street. You're not allowing illegals into your house where you're feeding them and giving them healthcare too. You're taking care of yourself. So deporting illegal aliens, not giving any money to foreign countries, single subject spending bills. And if you change the incentive structure for congressmen, you get term limits in, you get where special interest money doesn't go into paying or buying their campaigns. You stop insider trading. That's going to change the incentive structure for members of Congress. I think it was Thomas Sowell who said, show me the incentive and I'll show you the problem.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. We got to take another break. When we come back, I want to jump into accountability, starting with accountability in the military and what you've seen so far from the Trump administration vis-a-vis the COVID vaccine unlawful order. We'll be right back with John Frankman.
Take a look at the water you just poured. It looks clean. It tastes fine. But what's really in it? Lead, fluoride, arsenic, chlorine, pesticides, PFAS forever chemicals, pharmaceutical residues, and bacteria. Every single day, these toxins flow straight from your tap into your glass, into your family. It's time for Sentry H2O from Worldview Water. Sentry H2O is the ultimate water treatment technology, designed to remove harmful toxins, balance your water's pH, and enrich it with essential minerals like calcium and magnesium, the way nature intended. From commercial-scale systems to whole house filtration to crisp, delicious drinking water right at your kitchen sink and shower, Sentry H2O delivers cleaner, healthier water everywhere you need it. No plumber, no tools, no plumbing knowledge required. Perfect for homes, apartments, rentals, RVs, refrigerators, and more. Because everyone deserves access to clean, healthy water. Visit worldviewwater.net. That's worldviewwater.net.
How do you reconcile a strong urge to follow orders with a real crisis of conscience?
Well, first and foremost, you have to follow God's law, not man's law. And you had people who, it wasn't just a conscience thing. This was unlawful, and it was unlawful because there was no FDA-approved shot that was available to service members. They were only offered the emergency use one. So everybody who was punished was done so unlawfully, and that's why these flag officers have to be held accountable. And you were one of the few congressmen who understood that your job as a member of the House Armed Service Committee wasn't just to write a blank check to Congress. It was to be the civilian leadership over those generals to keep them in check when they stepped out of line, when they weren't being lawful.
When they weren't being lawful. Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. And my guest today is that man right there, former U.S. Army Special Forces Captain John Frankman. And John, you left the service over the COVID-19 unlawful order for the COVID-19 vaccine. You were pretty well versed in the religious aspects, but also the legal aspects. From your perspective, I mean, we've been on the stage with President Trump where he talked about this, and you asked him questions about it just before the election in 24. So from your perspective, how is it going since he got back into office on what he said he was going to do?
So unfortunately, the reinstatement process has not been what we were all expecting to be, and there really hasn't been any accountability. And when I talked to President Trump, I asked, what would you do to repair the military and how you hold people accountable? And he said he would fire their asses, but we haven't really seen any accountability. There have been people who've been tangentially fired for other things. Usually it was under the name of DEI or other such matters, but some of the biggest COVID tyrants are the ones who are at the highest levels of the Pentagon right now. And looking at the numbers, we had about 100,000 leave the military because of the vax mandate. 8,600 are considered involuntarily separated, about 80, 90K considered voluntarily separated. And of that 100K or so, and we don't have the exact number because it's not a stat that the DoD would want to track, less than 200 have come back in as far as the most recent stats I have. So that's a 500 to 1 ratio, less than one person for every 500 forced out. That's not acceptable. And the reason that's the number is the process is overly bureaucratic and difficult. There isn't full back pay. Only those who are kicked out are entitled to back pay. And even their back pay is subtracted from everything they made as a civilian from the day they were kicked out to the day they go back in. Most people don't get entitled to any. And there's been no accountability. And if you have a broken relationship, a relationship that's messed up, you don't go back to it unless there's some kind of amends. And there hasn't been that amends. So there's so much more work to be done, and the military will be a morally weaker place until then. And there's going to be no way to ensure that this doesn't happen again unless different laws are put in the books or there's accountability and people are held accountable for the laws that they already broke.
Yeah, I mean, we both know people that we worked with on the outside that are now on the inside as part of the reinstatement task force, I believe. And there's more than one. There's one in each service and one in the Department of War level, I believe. I mean, are you hearing about what the big sticking points are beyond the back pay? And I honestly thought that had been addressed, but I guess it hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, there really shouldn't have to be a reinstatement task force. It should just be a MILPER or some guidance that you're told what to do. But it comes down to, I think, a political appetite thing. And you don't really hear any members of Congress talking about this right now. I think everybody wants to check the box, say, hey, we did it. We solved the issue. Let's move on. We don't want to get hung up on COVID. Maybe there's special interest money or involved. Maybe enough of their constituents aren't loud enough about it to where they actually care. But from the people on the inside, there isn't the understanding. Most people don't know, why was this an unlawful order? Secretary of War came out, said it was unlawful. But for most, there's this understanding that, hey, there's some special people who left the military, and because Trump's trying to appease them, he's going to let them back in. But really, when we're told to get shots, we just got to get shots. So what's the deal? There still is that mindset. So there hasn't been the shift in narrative. So I know the people on the task force, some are very good friends of mine. They're doing everything they can. There is one who's doing the kind of review. And once they do the review, we'll see if anything comes out about it. But I think they're still going against the bureaucracy, and we just can't underestimate the swampiness, not only in the government, but also in the Pentagon. Yeah,
I'm glad you brought up the Congress, because that's the sense I get, is that they've moved past it. And that's unfortunate, because 100,000 folks like these folks, I mean, that's a pretty big hit on readiness, right?
It absolutely is. And, we have those stats based on how many people left the military within the first year of the mandate coming out, looking at how many religious exemptions were filed or how many people left, even with regards to that. But it is absolutely a huge number. And maybe those people, they would have eventually retired or left or med boarded, but it's just them doing it sooner and all at once. And that's where you have this particular group that is a lot more morally sensitive, a lot more focused on their conscience, on following the Constitution. Many of them are very talented at their jobs and what they do. We know pilots. I was a special operator. It took a lot of money to put me through the training I did. So that is the hit on readiness. But I'm more concerned about the hit on the moral capacity of the service. And with regards to Congress, like what I said with Matt Gaetz, what the House Armed Service Committee should do is they should be holding military leadership accountable. They should be the civilian leadership over the military, not just the the daddies that write checks to the DoD because they say they need it. We're not their sugar daddies. We're the civilians that overlook them. So I would hope that we see that, and that's would be my intention, God willing, if we get elected.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
Introducing Worldview Tube Vault. Over 35 years of radio broadcasts, television programs, documentaries, and ebooks. Plus, Worldviewpedia, our powerful search engine for instant worldview and Bible research. Join for as little as $7.99 a month. And now, Vault members get something brand new, courses. Our very first course is here, the Book of Revelation with Brannon House. 53 in-depth lessons, complete with overview quizzes, walking you verse by verse through one of the most important books in Scripture. Getting started is simple. Go to worldviewtube.com/vault and join today. Already a member? Visit worldviewtube.com, click the person icon in the top right, and log in. Then hover over Vault in the menu and select Courses. That's it. You're in. Join WorldviewTube Vault today at worldviewtube.com/vault.
Friends, this is Brannon House. For more than a year now, I've been teaching through the book of Revelation, and the response from you has been overwhelming. You've asked me again and again, when are you going to put this study in print? We want to mark it up. We want to share it with our families. Well, it's here. My brand new 2-volume commentary on the book of Revelation, verse by verse, chapter by chapter. This is not a watered down, allegorized replacement theology approach to Revelation. This is a literal, grammatical, historical study, the way the Lord intended his word to be read. And I connect the prophecy of Revelation to the headlines you're watching unfold right now, the rise of global government and the convergence of end-time events the Lord Jesus warned us about. Folks, we are living in serious days, and there has never been a more important time to understand what God has told us about what is coming. Get your 2-volume Revelation commentary today at worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com.
But I really want to move on.
Yes, sir. So, lifelong Republican, I'm going to be Trump all 3 elections. Now, on that note, one of the biggest reasons I voted for Trump was with your famous law. And right now, look the way that things are going with the Epstein files.
Can I be honest with y'all on the Epstein files? So then ultimately, me included, we all voted to release every single one of them. Now, here's the part that nobody really knew is the child pornography, the gross, heinous acts that were in there. There's all these things now that are starting to come to light. There were those documents that now you can't prosecute a dead pedophile over. So this was, every document is out there. I have no desire to see smut that's in those documents. But I really want to move on away from something that I feel like is a dark, gross chapter of America where a dead pedophile was controlling the agenda of the United States of America. I want to go to work. And I feel like there's no more work to be done on those documents.
But at the same time, particularly for the victims, and I worked as a military sexual trauma counselor. So I
don't want to re-traumatize those victims, put their names out in the public domain either.
Their names don't have to be out there, but accountability is something that is so important. And if we know that there are people who are perpetrators, who have harmed children, we need accountability.
Yeah, well, it is all out there for the full world to go investigate. So nothing, there's nothing, to my knowledge,
saying, hey, this was dark, and the people that were engaged in this behavior are going to be held accountable because we have a higher standard.
And I give there's me. The trauma that I deal with has been more on the side of people that have been first responders dealing with PTSD. And so I get very sensitive about re-traumatizing somebody about open wounds. I just want to go to work. And every day that we deal with this issue, I'm afraid we're just not getting focused on trying to save our country. They're out there. People want to read them, they can read.
Yeah, so for those of you who are watching and wondering, what was that clip of? Well, I'm John Frankman, former Special Forces Green Beret, candidate for Florida's 1st Congressional District, and that was Representative Jimmy Patronis, who I'm challenging in the primary. So he took over for Matt Gaetz after Matt Gaetz was chosen, picked up for Attorney General. And he was asked about the Epstein files at a Republican executive committee here in Okaloosa County, which is where I live. And his response was rather troubling. He kind of said that we didn't know what was in the files. There were a lot of dark things in there, and then goes on to say, I want to go back to work. There's no more work to be done in those documents. And then when pressed for accountability, moves forward into talking about that they're all out there. They're there for the world to see. It shouldn't actually take my job, my working on those documents to actually fix the problem. So this is a point that I've brought up. I think that one of my tenets is make accountability great again. And it's wrong for us to have a two-tier justice system where elites, powerful people involved in potentially intelligence agencies are able to get away with harming children, sexually trafficking children. And right now, what we've seen so far within Department of Justice has not been satisfactory. I think it's amazing that of the Republicans, there were only, the 4 that were willing to sign a discharge petition in order to release these documents, especially given that this was an issue that everybody was kind of fired up for in 2024. So wanting that kind of accountability, that's something that I'm pressing for. And it doesn't just relate to COVID accountability or accountability for Epstein. It relates to COVID accountability. It relates to 2020 election, January 6th, and I will pass it back to Colonel Maness.
Hey, John, thanks. Welcome back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the struggles of live TV. Luckily, we had a guest on that knows how to be a host. I appreciate you, John.
Of course.
Look, that Epstein clip wasn't just about Epstein. I think you covered it really well, but I do a lot of work in the weaponization of government space right now, John, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about what you'll do as a congressman in order to do things like set things right. Like the Epstein thing is one of those issues that, look, Epstein wasn't and Ghislaine Maxwell are not the only perpetrators in this. There are more perpetrators, and the American people, and I'm one of them, can't understand why more perpetrators aren't being tracked down, investigated thoroughly, and prosecuted where we're able.
Yeah, absolutely. And, every branch has their own particular powers that come with it. One of the powers that you have for Congress is to do hearings. I also think that apart from legislating hearings, you are a public voice. So you can use your public voice, your platform, in order to spread and direct the American people. So want to use that platform and use all the formation I received, the 4 years of Catholic seminary, the systematic theology degree, the special forces, Green Beret training, everything I've learned through fighting for COVID, and bring that to bear as a public voice. But further, we have the power of the purse. And if certain agencies aren't cooperating and doing their job, why should we be supporting their budget? That's where we can really hit them where they hurt and make that happen. So, I will not be afraid. I love the president, stand for the things that he ran on for sure. We'll support that mission. America first. MAGA isn't just owned by one person. That is a whole movement in and of itself of making America great again. And we'll fight to do so. But when it comes to going against party leadership, I'm willing to stand up against them. And I have my past proof to show that I'm willing to do it, because I was willing to forego my job as a Green Beret, standing on principle, even at great personal cost. So if I need to go full Thomas Massey and do a discharge petition, if it's for medical freedom amendment, if it's for a pro-life amendment, if it's for releasing files of some sort, I will not be afraid to sign those documents, put my name on the line, and know that I might have a bunch of money thrown at me and a primary challenger coming in 2 years. But guess what? If I win, it's not because of the special interest groups. It's because of the people who are getting active, volunteering, and coming up and showing up to vote.
Yeah, exactly right, man. Sorry about the beeping in the background, folks, but we're out of power and we're on emergency power. That's just a fact of life on that. So speaking of going back onto being aggressive and fighting this, even if you have to go against the president. I mean, he took Thomas Massey out with about $32 million spend. Do you think you'll be able to get elected in a primary with that position? Or how are the folks on the ground talking about this kind of stuff, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, so there's some folks who are just not as politically involved. So they think that Thomas Massey is a terrible person who's trying to disrupt the president's agenda. And the difficulty, and you know politics well enough as I do, that there are people who do know all the players. They know their positions. They probably have met you already because they're so involved. You have another kind of layer of people who might watch news pretty regularly, but it's just Fox. They get whatever mailers they're sent. They kind of believe sort of the lines that they're told there. So they're somewhat involved, but maybe kept in a certain way. And there's largely age demographics based on that. But a lot of people, younger folks, really love Thomas Massey. A lot of them can't understand why was so much money spent against him, and see it as a problem that Republicans are fighting each other so much and willing to kind of, I'd say, waste millions and millions of dollars in a primary when we are all polymarket prediction markets say going to lose the House in the 2026. So I'd rather see resources pushed in some particular way. Would I be able to withstand a $30 million primary? Probably not. I mean, that's crazy amounts of money, and I don't have it yet. You know, God willing, get elected. We'll see where popularity goes. And my problem right now is just name recognition, name ID. If you're on X, probably doing okay. But just getting out to those folks that might not come to the Republican clubs, but still vote pretty regularly.
Yeah. It's can you hear me okay?
I got you. Yep.
Yeah. It's tough. What are your voters talking about regarding lawfare? I mean, lawfare and the Epstein thing is kind of like we hear from our congressmen. They don't really want to talk about that kind of stuff because they think we've moved beyond that. But I interview 1 week. Every show I did that week was a lawfare victim whose case is actively being pursued right now.
Well, there's a lot of people who are concerned about how the Florida State, the Department of, I'm trying to think, the DCO, the one that takes children, so Department of Children, Families, a number of kind of legally kidnapping of children because the parents aren't doing the medical procedures that the government deems necessary. That's a huge thing where they're seeing government intrusion even at the Florida State level. So I've had Joy Zaroff, and her daughter was basically kidnapped from her, and reaching out to her and hearing what's going on there, going to that court case. That's one of the areas. There's a lot of flock cameras going on. So although Democrats aren't in power right now, that's a huge issue here, largely thanks to the governor race and a lot of issues being highlighted there. So there is concerns about our Fourth Amendment rights not being spied upon. And AI data centers is another area where we're kind of worried about government intrusion to some way. It's obviously has its environmental concerns, but it's also now how is this AI capacity going to be linked in with the flock cameras to further spy on Americans?
Yeah. What are they saying about flock cameras? I mean, it just hit my radar here locally in on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi just in the last week. Somebody told me, "Hey, there's a flock camera 100 yards from your house." And I wasn't aware that I voted to allow those. Are most municipalities stepping up, and is Congress going to do anything to help, or should they?
Congress is probably not going to do anything because you and I both know how useless they are, right? I mean, they voted to continue FISA spying, which has been used and weaponized against Americans. So I think you got to go back to the people who want safety and liberty deserve neither, will have neither kind of quote. Largely conservative circles, people are against it. I think there's some police who've seen that it's made their job easier, but there's always the concern of who's going to use that tool when they're in power. And I think just going through COVID, as short memory span as we have, we need to look into that and ask that question, who's going to use this later on? So I'm happy. Most of the counties are stepping up with regards to AI data centers in the area. So some of them are given outright bans. And that's largely, like I said, thanks to the governor race that's happening here. But with flock, I'd hope that there is some kind of a national ban, but within the state, we need to pressure our state legislature. And I do have some concerns about our state moving forward when DeSantis leaves.
Yeah. On artificial intelligence, there's a big debate about, at the federal level, about whether the feds should have one federal standard and regulatory piece of legislation, or whether the states do it at the state level. I'm a big believer in the states are the laboratories for finding the best solution. So I hesitate when I hear that even the president say things like, "Well, we can't have the states doing, a mixture of regulation and all that and everything. It's just got to be a federal one and stop the states from doing that." But doesn't that violate the 10th Amendment of the Constitution?
It does. And that's where it would be nice to see legislators actually following it, where, hey, we're going to make it a state issue, but it becomes something that's so grave and we have such consensus by things being done in a certain way, let's make it an amendment then. So it would be awesome if we saw, hey, Florida handles it this way, California another. What's working? What concerns do we have? Okay, let's go on ahead and let's make some kind of amendment with regards to artificial intelligence where you're not doing deep fakes in a certain way or whatever. But I do appreciate that perspective.
As a federal legislator, will you look for the best ways to implement guardrails, especially on military decision making and those kind of things? I wrote an article last year that got published. I think it was in Stars and Stripes about not letting artificial intelligence into the nuclear decision making and order giving process.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds dangerous. Yeah, that sounds like a thing to definitely do. We would not want to see a nuke go off because AI thinks, oh well, or they read something wrong, or you have to have that human touch. Absolutely. So I think that would be a smart thing to kind of work within the NDAA, because that gets passed regardless, and maybe even just making it another law outside of the NDAA itself.
Yeah. On this accountability piece, John, the accountability of federal prosecutors, federal judges that are continuing this lawfare, and it's holdovers from the cases. A lot of them are holdovers from the Biden administration, but they're still being prosecuted by the Trump DOJ. Is there anything that you as a congressman will be able to do to try to mitigate that and get some of these cases thrown out that really shouldn't have ever been cases in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, certainly raising awareness on it specifically, or maybe having some, I don't know, looking at it and seeing if there's some kind of pattern where you can have the laws, changed or mitigated in some way or shape or form. I'd have to look at the kind of case by case basis and then see what kind of an overall catch there can be. But I mean, the fact is that conservatives have been attacked by the government more than Democrats have, that there's been a weaponization against them, period. We've seen it during January 6th, with regards to the 2020 election, with the IRS. Well, I just try to get rid of the IRS, period, and go to a flat tax, a national sales tax, or some combination of the two. And that could, but maybe just dismantling the federal bureaucracy. It's just too much. We have unelected bureaucrats making laws for people, putting rules together, and then prosecuting people on those rules. So there needs to be some kind of relief. And certainly with regards to constituent services, if that were to happen to anyone within my district, would then fight with those appropriate agencies.
Yeah, the question about helping folks, I think that's a big issue, especially for younger people. I mean, they look at somebody like me, and I talk about how I believe in the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, but they don't see classical liberalism doing things like protecting them from outlandish university prices and this whole social culture of being told you got to go to college to get a good job and then not being able to get a good job after you go $200,000 or more in debt, and the housing market being crushed by these 20 million illegals that were brought into this country, over and above the already millions and millions and millions of illegals that were here already. And the illegals are getting benefits both at the federal and state level. And you've got young people that bought into the Charlie Kirk coalition that really put President Trump back in office in a miracle. It's a historical miracle. A lot of them are looking at us going, you guys, you're not showing me that you're serious about this. What needs to happen in Congress to show those folks that were serious about it. Because I'm serious about it. I want to enact new policies that do things like reduce the debt, reduce the size of the federal bureaucracy, deport all the illegals, and those kind of things. But how do we convince them that we really mean it?
Well, Congress just has to do something. They have to pass legislation. And I think back to an event last Thursday night where Jimmy Patronis I was, all he talked about is the amazing work that Trump's doing, how evil Democrats are, that Democrat socialists are taking over. That's not winning young people. They need to see action. They need to see the promises kept. So you have to get the mass deportations going. We can't just stop and start talking about amnesty. There needs to be the mass deportations, period, end of story. So never stop with that. And don't make a bunch of commercials about it either, because we just care about numbers, not publicity. Paying down the federal deficit is a huge thing, shrinking the size of the federal government, because I believe that the inflation, the reason why everything is so expensive is because we've been printing out this fake money, printing out so much money, and that's just made everything cost more. So if you don't actually pay down the deficit, if you don't actually shrink the size of the federal government, people will never actually know that you're serious. So making these substantial changes, I think getting government funding out of school systems, because when schools know that they can charge more because the government's going to spend more, then they raise their prices too. Let's get rid of all of that. Let's go back to the free market economy that makes sense in all aspects of business. Let's get some antitrust laws out there to break up some of these oligopolies and corporations so that there can be more competition. There's so many different creative ideas that Congress can do. They're just not doing it. They're just focused on one thing at a time, and it's often political. The SAVE Act, no reason it shouldn't have passed, but if they were serious, they would have had it legislated on day one when they came back in so that Trump could have signed it on January 20th when he was sworn in. Anyone who thinks that Congress is actually fighting right now, if you think that they care about COVID, you're lying to yourself. You think they care about Epstein, you're lying not Epstein, but Fauci, you're lying to yourself. They had 18 months to hold him accountable. They didn't. Same thing with the SAVE Act, everything else. So they need to stop thinking of just staying in power and treating the majority as the win itself. They need to actually get wins, because I'm sorry, they're going to lose the young vote next time. And I think that's what's going to happen if they keep pushing these establishment candidates in the primaries.
All right, man. Well, thank you very much. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I appreciate you coming in and sharing this platform. The election is August 18th.
Yep, early voting has happened. That's right. So early voting right now, and the election is August 18th. So you live in Florida's 1st District, please vote for me. If you know somebody, please tell them to. And if you want to support, go to franklinforflorida.com.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Good luck, my friend.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. I'll see you on Training Tuesday on Worldview Tube.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at Worldview Healthcare.
The storm hits. The power's out. The stores are empty. Grocery shelves cleared in hours. And now you're staring into an empty
faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
And welcome to the broadcast. Glad you're with us on this Friday, August 7th. 2026. That makes tomorrow August 8th. Let's see. What's August 8th? Oh, Melissa's birthday, August 8th, which is one reason why I'm not working quite as much this week, taking off of Worldview Report and Brandon House Live. Be back with a regular schedule Wednesday. So happy birthday, Melissa. 29 years old, doing great. We are going to be joined, speaking of 29, we're going to be joined by a very young Dr. Andy Woods, who also looks very well rested. He's also taking a little break from the pulpit, and I think has just returned from a trip, and he's going to join us today as we do a Middle East and Bible prophecy update. And may I ask, was Anthony Fauci a test in some ways for the rise of the Antichrist? In other words, people following Anthony Fauci, a guy who says, I'm going to save you. I'm going to save you. And he had authority. He appeared to have this great authority and knowledge, and people followed him. Is this really kind of a precursor to how easily people will be deceived by the Antichrist? Here's another question. Does J.D. Vance, what does J.D. stand for? Some are asking if it perhaps stands for something related to the Jews and division. Someone's giving him a specific name. What JD stands for, we'll tell you about that. Evangelical leader warning about JD Vance. We'll discuss all that and a lot more today, I can promise you that, as we're joined by Dr. Andy Woods here. Dr. Woods, welcome back to the broadcast. Thank you for being with us.
Brandon, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you with us. Well, let's get right to it. I want to go right away to this article about Anthony Fauci, because our mutual friend, Brandon Holthouse, has an article up about him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's entitled, Anthony Fauci, Mass Deception and the Coming Man of Lawlessness. It just came out August 1st. He writes, on July 29, 2026, Anthony Fauci appeared under subpoena before the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. The man who once spoke to the American people with an unquestioned authority, the man whom the media portrayed as the embodiment of science, repeatedly refused to answer questions and invoked the Fifth Amendment, perhaps as many as 111 times. But he goes on to say, is Anthony Fauci really an example to us as to how it could be that the Antichrist could rise and be accepted? He says the Antichrist will be far more persuasive if millions of people submitted to Fauci, an elderly government bureaucrat armed with charts, credentials, media support, and the language of public health. What will happen when the Antichrist appears with apparent supernatural power? Dr. Woods?
Well, yeah, this is a great article. I was actually just with Brandon. I got to get my Brandons and Brandons separate.
Yes.
I've got Brandon House and Brandon Holthouse.
Yeah.
So both of you guys are good friends of mine, but it's just, I was just with him, but the truth of the matter is it's a extremely well done article. He says, look, I'm not saying he is the Antichrist. What he's saying here is he represents what 1 John 4 verses 2 and 3 and 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 7 says is the spirit of the Antichrist, or the mystery of lawlessness, which Scripture is very clear will exist in the world before the final Antichrist comes. So what the Bible says is before the Antichrist shows up, there's going to be some, baby or miniature Antichrists. And this article makes a great case about how Fauci is the spirit of the Antichrist in the sense that he spoke. Everybody was swept into fear, including the church. And everybody just acquiesced to every word that came from this guy's mouth, to the point where, they were willing to give up personal freedoms in exchange for the illusory promise of I'll protect you. Of course, we remember Benjamin Franklin's famous line, those who give up liberty in exchange for security, deserve neither. But human beings are the way that they are, and if you put fear into them, they'll acquiesce all kinds of freedom. And, it talks about a psychologist in here, whose name is given. I think his name is Malone. And how he kind of documented, what happens when somebody comes out with fear is, 40% of the population believes it. And the remaining 40% of the population just kind of goes along with what the first 40% of the population is doing. And it's just a tremendous exercise or study, if you will, in the psychology of people who really aren't rooted and grounded in God's word, and how they'll just give up all kinds of things, in exchange for someone's expert opinion because he has a lab coat on and he's supposedly the expert. And we all ended up with egg on our face that followed. I mean, a lot of us didn't, but most of the world and Christendom did. Now that Fauci is being exposed, through the Fauci diaries, and the fact that this guy has to take the fifth 111 times in a hearing. Now that he's being exposed as a fraud, we all have egg on our face, including Christian leaders, that acquiesced. I'm thinking of people like Andy Stanley, who were telling us, I'm thinking of people like, who's the guy that took over for Pastor Chuck Smith, Brian Broderson, browbeating people for not having a mask on, browbeating people for not getting the vax. My mother, who is now at 90, was having her best friends call her at her house and just browbeating her over the fact that she hadn't been vaxxed. And she wasn't vaxxed because we, advised her not to do it, and she saw the light. But just this spirit of hysteria that came over people, Andy Stanley, telling us that we're taking Hebrews 10, verse 25 out of context, which says, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together. And we kept saying, as long as we obey Fauci, we're disobeying the Bible. So here comes Andy Stanley browbeating us over our understanding of Scripture. Is there an apology from any of these people now that Fauci has been exposed for being the complete and total fraud that he is? No. Everybody just kind of forgets and moves on. But this is how the Antichrist is going to do it. It's a dress rehearsal.
And you have Robert Jeffress down there in Dallas. He praised it. I think, is he the one that said Jesus would take the shot if he was here? Is he the one that said that?
Yeah, him and Franklin Graham, as much
Franklin,
as
I think Franklin, Samaritan's Purse, actually was getting government grants because we saw them setting up tents in New York City. We saw them, we have screenshots of facilities where they were dispensing the shot. So I don't know for a fact, but I think they might have been contractors getting money from the government, but they were at least promoting the shot. That much we know. And then, of course, I don't know if Franklin got the shot. Maybe he did. But he ended up having heart issues a few years later. I don't know if it's related or not, but yeah, Franklin's group was pushing the shot. I remember that. We have pictures of Samaritan's Purse group set up.
Yeah, and Greg Laurie, famous Christian evangelist. Most people look at him as the next Billy Graham. He was running, vaccination centers, out of his church. I guess some people this weekend told me he's kind of made a U-turn on that recently. But I mean, this is all part of the historical record. I'm not trying to trash people. I'm just saying that Jeffress, Franklin Graham are on record saying that this vax is a miraculous cure from God. It's a miraculous cure from Jesus. And so they were just marching lockstep with this Antichrist agenda. I don't know, Brandon, if I was someone of notoriety that, made a goof like that, I think based on my own Christian conscience, I would get in front of people and say, I messed up. And you know what? When you do that, people respect you for it.
Oh, they do.
But for whatever reason, these guys don't want to do it. They just want to, pretend like nothing happened, and let's just keep the Lawrence Welk music playing and so forth.
I don't know there's anything wrong with the Lawrence Welk music playing. I actually watched an episode of the Lawrence Welk the other night, 1976. It was kind of refreshing.
Well, no, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it.
No, you're not. I'm just messing with you.
It's like the Rockets. Let's just keep the Rockettes, or however they're called, dancing. Yeah. And just pretend like nothing happened.
Yeah.
And by the way, this same kind of crowd of people did this exact same thing with, remember Y2K?
Yeah.
all these ministries were saying planes are going to fall out of the sky and all this kind of stuff. And well, as we all know, that was the non-event of the century. And then all of those ministries, well-known people you know, people I know, just the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year, they just acted like nothing happened. And I think it damages your credibility when you do that. I think people appreciate it when you get something wrong, as we all do, and you fess up, you know, not the end of the world.
I do think, though, on the Y2K thing, I do think some of the people warning about it caused a lot of groups to go into and repair stuff and get ready for it. I do think that probably did help.
Well, that's good.
I do think that probably did help some degree, but what do I know? I'm hearing both sides. So something like it was a big nothing burger. Others like, well, it was something, but all the people talking about it actually caused groups to go, governments and whatnot. I don't know. I'm not a programmer, but I certainly agree with you on the shot part. Now, this whole issue of lab coat, you use that phrase, the lab coat. This is important. This is in my series on Brainwashed America. Part 4 will be out here in September. Part 3 came out a few weeks ago. It is for members only, but if you belong to the vault, you can see the 2 hours of Part 3, Brainwashed America Part 3. Again, all the details on that are at worldviewtube.com/vault. worldviewtube.com/vault, which, by the way, I also will just add real quick, because in Part 4 of Brainwashed America, I deal with something called the Milgram experiment. It was an experiment done back in 1963. We've discussed it here before, where guys in lab coats got people to carry out what they thought was torturing people, shocking people, even including a lethal shock, because the experts were telling them and prodding them, even though they knew this isn't right, we shouldn't do this, they succumbed to the pressure of the so-called expert, the Milgram experiment, 1963. That's in Brainwashed America Part 4, which I said would be out in September. But when we come back on the break, I want to play a little clip on that report, because I think it's so important. In that documentary Part 4 as well, I have an article that I report on where a group of kids at a Christian school were polled, and they were against the idea of apocalyptic man-made global warming. They were opposed to it. But after the Christian school, with the trusted leaders of said Christian school, brought in someone to teach them and quote the Bible on why man-made global warming is a problem, and they re-polled the kids, they were able to change their minds. And the whole article is, if trusted religious leaders put people up, even if it's not them, if they put up people and say, these are experts, trust them, people will trust them because they're being promoted by trusted Christian leaders.
The storm hits. The power's out. The stores are empty. Grocery shelves cleared in hours. And now you're staring into an empty pantry, wondering how you're going to feed your family. It doesn't have to be that way. Worldview Store offers premium emergency freeze-dried food, real meals packed with nutrition, ready when you need them most. Hearty breakfasts, savory dinners, hot, satisfying food for your whole family. With a shelf life of up to 25 years, you store it once and forget about it until the day you need it. Just add water. In minutes, you've got a hot, delicious meal. No refrigeration, no fuss, no panic. Hurricanes, blackouts, job loss, supply shortages, whatever comes, you'll be ready. Don't wait for the next emergency to wish you'd prepared. Visit worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com, or call 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652.
So I am reading now through, this is one reason why I need to take a little time off. I'm reading through Revelation Commentary, Volume 3. Volume 1, Volume 2 are gone. They are up in Minneapolis, St. Paul at the printer up there. I talked to them this morning. They're done. Volume 3 is what I'm reading through now, making notes, making a few additions, making a couple corrections here and there. This is my last chance to do that. And so volume 3 of the Revelation commentary is about to go next week while they are working on volume 1 and 2. So nothing's being held up because they're working on volume 1 and 2 right now. Volume 3 soon. As I was sitting this morning with a cup of coffee, reading on volume 3 and making notes, I'll tell you one of the things why I'm excited about this 3-volume set, hardcover, with a beautiful brown hardcover with gold print on the cover and spine. Just a beautiful books. The reason I am excited about this is, well, many reasons, but one is throughout this study of the book of Revelation, I think many people who obtain a copy of these 3 books will be shocked at the number of very, very important theological and doctrinal topics we discuss in layman terms that anyone can understand. As I told you today, I was so pleased to hear on Facebook, I was told that a young lady said, I guess it was a mother who said that her 18-year-old daughter wanted a copy of these 3 books. And that's exactly what I love to hear. I wrote this for high school kids all the way through adults. Everyone is going to understand it. And in here, people are going to be able to come to understand, sadly, concepts and ideas that are so important for the Christian life, particularly as the world spins what appears to be out of control. And one of the issues I was reading on today in this has to do with the providence of God, God's sovereignty, his total control, and his providence, how man's free will and God's complete authority are not contradictory at all. And then I get into the moral will of God and the providential will of God. The moral will of God and the providential will of God. So man's free will, God's sovereignty. These are very important topics. I explain them in layman terms, but they will give you a lot of hope, a lot of encouragement and understanding as a Christian, particularly in these days. And these are things that our young people really need to understand, okay? So that's just one of many examples that I can give you of very, very important doctrinal issues that I discuss. Another one is the perseverance of the saints and how that scripture in Revelation is ripped out of context to teach that if you don't persevere, you're not going to make it to heaven. That if you don't persevere, you may not be a Christian. Somehow that Christians don't sin. Well, we know they do. What do you think? I say to those who push this concept, there are no such thing as backslidden Christians or carnal Christians. Well, we're not saying it's a good thing, but what do you do with Matthew 18 in church discipline? Who is that being performed on? Christians that are acting biblically? No, people are acting in ways they should not be acting, according to the Bible. So I explain in here very important concepts like how scripture is twisted to build bad theology, which has people not having a assurance of salvation, not understanding the difference between justification and sanctification, not understanding our rewards versus our salvation being secure. So these are very important themes running through this 3-volume set. And so anyway, I thought I'd mention that because I was sitting this morning, as I said, reading through volume 3 here, as volume 2 and 1 and 2 have already gone to the printer. I thought, wow, this is exactly, again, why I have to stress that this is a book for all ages, high school and above, because you know what? Do you ever learn something as an adult and think, I wish I'd learned that 10, 15, 20 years ago? I wish I'd known that 20 years ago. Well, that's what you're going to find in this series. Lots of gems, biblical gems, theological, doctrinal gems like that. All right, full details on that are at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com. Dr. Andy Woods joins us as we discuss Bible prophecy, the Middle East. We're going to get to some things going on with Turkey, Pakistan, here in just one moment, Saudi Arabia. But back to his article by our friend, Pastor Brandon Holthouse. And Anthony Fauci, is he kind of a prototype, if you will, of how the Antichrist can gain so much authority and people will follow him, particularly during a time of fear, crisis, economic collapse, perhaps, war. You know, he shows up promising peace. People are tired of wars. right? Kind of feeling that way about Iran right now, guys, getting tired of hearing about this. But how about if it was on your own soil going on, and it's going on all over the world? Economic collapse, massive inflation, social turmoil, chaos, violence, crime. And the guy shows up promising peace. In a time of chaos, when people's minds are running away with them, who wouldn't succumb to the promise of peace? Much how Obama promised change. Remember that? Well, we then know he goes and makes war. But Anthony Fauci maybe is a prototype. Psychological manipulation as well as spiritual. The Milgram experiment back in 1963, I think, helps us understand that. Listen to this little recording.
A decade earlier, psychologist Stanley Milgram had also looked at how we respond to authority. In order to understand how people were induced to obey unjust regimes and participate in atrocities such as the Holocaust, he set up an experiment. Volunteers were told they were taking part in scientific research to improve memory.
Would you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Where?
Separated by a screen, the teacher would ask the learner questions in a word game and administer an electric shock when the answer was incorrect. He was told to increase the voltage with each wrong answer.
Cloud. Horse. Rock. House. Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer. Horse.
Oh. Experiment. That's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right on.
I refuse to go on. Let me out.
The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
Participants didn't know that the learner was really an actor and the so-called shocks harmless.
You're going to get a shock. 180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of
You
here.
can't stand it. I'm not going to kill that man, there. I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman? I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please. All right, next one. Slow. Walk, dance, truck, music.
Two-thirds of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure. In this case, a man in a white coat.
Wow. A man in a white coat and two-thirds were willing to give what they thought was a lethal shock. 1963. Dr. Woods?
Well, you know, the verse I'm thinking of is 1 Timothy 6, verse 20, which warns about what is falsely called knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, read that in the King James. It translates it this way: of what is falsely called science. Science. So right there in the scripture, you know, we're warned against people claiming some kind of authority, you know, trust the science. I mean, isn't that why we think today that human beings came from apes? Because the science tells us, and we don't understand the difference between, you know, observational science, which is true science, which is the believer's best friend, you know, the scientific method, observable, testable, and repeatable. And by the way, most of the major areas of science were started by Christians. So keep that in mind when people tell us that we're anti-science, but we don't know how to distinguish that between historical science, where you just pretend like a process that's very slow that you can see happening in front of you has always been, when you have no idea that it's always been because you weren't in the past to see what was happening in the past. So, you know, I guess my point is we're told to believe all of this stuff, evolution, whatever, all in the name of science. And that's what Fauci and his crew said all of the time during 2020. Trust the science, trust the science, trust the science. Well, guess what? We did, not understanding that it's science, you know, or knowledge falsely called. And gosh, we'll just do anything to submit to someone that's an authority figure to tell us how to think. And that's what the Antichrist is going to do. And humanity, you know, as this Milgram experiment shows, is prep for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you go over to worldviewreport.com, folks, worldviewreport.com, your daily aggregated news site, worldviewreport.com, you'll see several articles there today, brand new, just posted. And I want to deal with a few of these that we see here. Iran's shakedown and America's empty quiver. It's an article basically showing Iran draws the Hormuz route through its own waters, threatens to black out the Gulf, and Washington discovers its quivers is nearly empty, plus first Israeli deaths in Lebanon since the June truce, and then your poll verdict. Where there are reports coming that President Trump at Camp David was quite unhappy with Pete Hegseth, that he was not aware of this drawdown not being corrected, that according to insiders, he thought this problem was being fixed or had been fixed, only find out it has not been fixed. And of course, again, you know, Dr. Woods, we're declining. America's declining. I hate to say it. We're not in the age of, this is not a golden age. What did we read the other day? Someone correct me if I'm wrong. What did you read the other day, guys? That those who are under the age of 30, what percentage of them are not able to pay their bills or living with their parents? 70%? 70% of those under 35? Under 35, 70% are not comfortable. They're not comfortably paying their bills. 70% of those under 35 are not comfortably paying their bills. Now, of course, I would need to see what that means. Is that because you're going to Starbucks every day and when you can make it at home for pennies? I don't know. I'd have to see. But we have a lot of them. Do we know what? We have a percentage of how many of those are living with their parents still. How many? 25.2 million. 20 who are how old? Adults under 35. So 18 to 35, 22 million. 25 million, excuse me, living at home with their parents. I think that's a record ever since records have been kept. Now that number might have gotten up there during the Great Depression. I don't know. But records weren't apparently being kept like that. So we are declining economically. We are declining militarily. You know, this kind of seems to set the stage, Dr. Woods, as Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iran, these other countries are rising, America's decreasing. Dr. Woods?
Well, you know, the thing about the youth that's also worth pointing out is as the system is not working for them, at least that's their perception, they're more than willing to scrap the system and replace it with something else.
Mm-hmm.
And that explains this sort of lurch, not just leftward, but as you can see from the Democratic Party, they're moving into things that the Democratic Party itself never used to stand for. Socialism, forget socialism, Marxism. I mean, these are communists that are winning these primaries all over the country. And I think it has to do with this disillusioned youth.
Mm. And Islam is rising in America. We'll get back to McKinney City Council unanimously approves a mosque. We'll be right back.
Friends, this is Brandon Howes. For more than a year now, I've been teaching through the book of Revelation, and the response from you has been overwhelming. You've asked me again and again, when are you going to put this study in print? We want to mark it up. We want to share it with our families. Well, it's here. My brand new 2-volume commentary on the book of Revelation, verse by verse, chapter by chapter. This is not a watered down, allegorized replacement theology approach to Revelation. This is a literal, grammatical, historical study, the way the Lord intended his word to be read. And I connect the prophecy of Revelation to the headlines you're watching unfold right now, the rise of global government and the convergence of end-time events the Lord Jesus warned us about. Folks, we are living in serious days, and there has never been a more important time to understand what God has told us about what is coming. Get your 2-volume Revelation commentary today at worldviewstore.com. That's worldviewstore.com.
All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com, worldviewradio.com. Don't forget about our fall conference coming up October 23 and 24. Dr. Woods will be there with us, along with Andy Cyrus, along with Patrick Wood, Shahram Hadian, myself, Alex Newman, Erwin Lutzer. What a lineup. Friday night, October 23rd, Saturday, October 24th. And it is free, but you must have a ticket. We're making it free for the first time, our national conference, but you must have a ticket to secure your seat. worldviewtube.com/events. Over 800 tickets now gone. worldviewtube.com/events. worldviewtube.com/events. And Dr. Woods, I want to go to this real quick because I think it fits. Evangelical leader. We discussed this last week, but I want to bring it back up. Does JD, standing for JD Vance, does JD now stand for Jew defamer? Evangelical Christian leader has called on President Trump to distance himself from recent statements about Israel made by his vice president. For the break, I'm discussing the decline of America. Of course, President Trump keeps saying that if it wasn't for himself, Israel wouldn't exist today, which again, I think is stealing God's glory. These two men, neither one of them are doing America favors when they behave and talk like this, which I think is why we're going to see America, in part, get the Nebuchadnezzar treatment and decline as a kingdom. Dr. Woods?
Well, this kind of rhetoric, I mean, like JD Vance goes on Joe Rogan and just sounds like something out of MS Now, trashing Israel. And, this guy's supposed to be a conservative. I wrote a book recently, Brandon, called The Bible and Your Vote. And it's not like a Reformed theologian's treatment of the subject, because I have an Israel section there. Most people, when they write books like this, deal with every issue, in the scripture, rightfully so, but they leave out Israel in terms of foreign policy because they're Reformed, meaning they're supersessionists, or what you just called earlier, replacement theologians. But my book has a section on foreign policy, and it has a section on Israel. And the only foreign policy statement that we're given in the whole Bible is in Genesis 12, verse 3, where God is extremely clear that those who bless Israel will be blessed, those who curse Israel will be cursed. I realize the Kirk Camerons of the world are trying to say the Bible doesn't say that, but it's not just in Genesis 12, verse 3. It's a theme starting there that goes through the whole Bible. I mean, the rest of the Bible is amplifying Genesis 12, verse 3. This is what Kirk Cameron is not telling you when he says, oh, that just applies to, Abram and his life, back in 2000 BC. So, when all of these political leaders, and I guess Trump has given the nod, some say, to J.D. Vance. He's kind of intimated that J.D. Vance is his guy, to be the next president. I mean, that's just terrifying to me when this guy is as anti-Israel as he is and won't distance himself from Tucker Carlson, says nothing negative about Candace Owens. I mean, I'm sorry. I might agree with J.D. Vance on some points, but I don't want a guy like that as our next president, because that's going to put us on the wrong side of God.
And I hear from some folks that he would, if he indeed does want someone, if he actually follows through on this and really does want someone like J.D. Vance, is because he knows J.D. Vance will lose. And some people who are doing the psychological analysis of President Trump are saying he's absolutely the kind of personality that would want America to lose and the Republicans to lose. You were nothing before I got here, and you'll be nothing after I leave. And if you don't want someone to come in and actually be a very successful president that's a Republican, if you don't want that because it builds up your credibility, so you think, and your ego, and the idea is that, you guys were nothing. You had George W. and Jeb Bush and those kind of people. You were nothing. And then I showed up and built the biggest political movement in modern time, with rallies packed out everywhere. And after I leave, you guys will again be nothing. Well, if that's what you want to send the message, and again, people can disagree. I'm not saying this is 100% what way it is. I'm saying there are people that know him and know his personality and his way of thinking that are saying this is why he would pick someone like a J.D. Vance. So who knows? Because I don't know. I think J.D. Vance has so many negatives, and there's so many video clips of things he has said in the past. And you just, mentioned a few of them, his association with Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and on and on. I want to go to this topic, and that is Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan. They sign a joint defense deal in shadow of Iran war. Look at that. Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Pakistan. Saudi Arabia, President Trump has been trying to win them over for the Abraham Accords. Turkey, Erdogan keeps talking about expanding the Ottoman Empire, bringing it back and conquering Jerusalem, but yet Saudi Arabia is going to go into a joint defense deal with them. What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, I mean, eventually it's going to, I believe, work out where the Saudis will be pulled into the Abraham Accords. And I mean, the reason I say that is because of Ezekiel 38, verse 13, which talks about the Saudis or Sheba and Dedan protesting the Gog-Magog invasion when it happens. And it's almost like the Saudis, are benefiting from Israel, which is what the Abraham Accords would allow. And that's why they're staging this lame protest. So I see things trending that way. Turkey is very interesting because there's an article in the stack of stuff, I sent you. I believe it's actually the first article on that list. No, I'm sorry, the second article where Turkey, Erdogan is saying things like this: Jerusalem is our city. That's a direct quote. Turkey will not give even a single pebble belonging to Jerusalem to Israel. This is news. I didn't know this. Following the 2017 United States decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, that was the Trump movement of our embassy, you remember, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Erdogan of Turkey organized an extraordinary summit of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, known as the OIC. And I hope everybody listening to this broadcast knows exactly who that group is. They're the group in the United Nations that they vote together and they exhibit tremendous influence. And if you understand that group, you can understand why the United Nations is as anti-Israel as it is. But anyway, that group got together and declared that the American move was, quote, against ethics, history, and consciousness, and completely null and void, close quote. Here's another quote from Erdogan: Turkey is larger than Turkey. And he's talking about Turkey moving beyond its borders in these quotes. And the author says this is a significant departure from the isolationist framework established during the founding of the modern day republic. It's talking about Turkey threatening Israel, including control over Jerusalem. Control over Jerusalem is repeated twice there, right at the beginning of the article. So people need to understand something, that Turkey was a place where Israelis used to take their vacations. And Ezekiel said, keep your eye on Turkey because Turkey's going to shift. And that's exactly what's happened in modern times. Exactly what Ezekiel said would happen is happening. Turkey is now hostile towards Israel. Keep in mind that in the Gog-Magog coalition, 4 names, and it's the only nation that gets 4 names, are assigned to Turkey: Meshach, Tubal, Gomer, and Togarmah. So the Holy Spirit in Ezekiel 38 and 39 is saying you better watch Turkey and you better watch Saudi Arabia because they have specific roles to play. And it's just eerie to me, Brandon, how the alignment of the nations is exactly what Ezekiel saw, 2,600 years ago.
And let's talk about the rise of Islam in America, because as those Islamic nations will eventually move against Israel, the Islamic nations are already moving against America, who has historically been one of Israel's longest allies since it was reformed again politically in 1948. So they're forming against and have an invasion going against Israel, America. Isn't that interesting? They're going to build a coalition and come against Israel, but first they're building a coalition to come against America and change the minds and hearts of Americans against defending Israel, which fits with the idea that the whole world, all the nations of the world, and all means all, turn against Israel. Well, here we go. McKinney City Council unanimously approves mosque after hours of public opposition. Man, one has to wonder the dollars that might be going under the table. I don't know. I'm just asking questions. I hope people would do some research. Then you add that to this. Now, it is Russia Today, so we do have to consider the propaganda of that. But nearly half of Americans want Benjamin Netanyahu arrested. I don't doubt that at all. I don't doubt that poll at all, not based on the anti-Semitism running in this country now. Think of this, Dr. Woods. Before these nations turn against Israel, these Islamic nations turn on Israel, these Islamic nations are turning on America to drain America from supporting Israel, and then it sets them up for a clean invasion. And so then God intervenes so that God gets all the glory, and all the world, it says, will know that he is God. Dr. Woods?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like with all of this spread of Islam and anti-Semitism in our country, God is getting America out of the way in preparation for this invasion. So it's exactly what you just said. The way those chapters read is God is the only one that gets the glory in the end, not the United States. And so it's almost like God is getting America out of the way so he can be glorified. But, you know, can you imagine this scenario? The mayor of New York. I mean, could you imagine this scenario maybe 20 years ago, how far-fetched it would be? The mayor of New York wants to arrest the leadership of Israel for coming to America to participate in, I don't know, any kind of conference, White House conference, United Nations conference. I mean, could you imagine Ed Koch, who was the mayor of New York at one time, you know, wanting to arrest Netanyahu? And that's what's happening. That's what this Mamdani, this 12er, this jihadist that the citizens of New York were foolish enough to elect, you know, that's what this is causing. Now, notice he doesn't want to arrest all the other human rights violators in the United Nations. He doesn't want to arrest China or Russia or someone like that. He wants to arrest the one Jewish state in the world against what, 57 or so Islamic countries. That's the guy he wants to arrest. He can't do it. International law, I guess, won't allow him, although he tried. And 49% of the population, if this article is correct, sides with Mamdani. I can't believe what's happening. I can't believe how fast my country, which has historically stood with Israel, is turning its back on Israel. And yet this is what God said would happen in the last days.
And now we have Islamic call to prayer now blasts 5 times per day across Minneapolis, setting the precedent for other cities. And of course, we already made reference to the voting in McKinney, Texas, where they just had city council meeting there, and people were saying no, 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 and yet they shoved it through anyway. Well, don't Sharia Texas. One individual is holding a sign that said that. We'll get to that and more with Dr. Andy Woods. AndyWoodsMinistries.org is his website. AndyWoodsMinistries.org. Well, we finally launched it after over a year of massive coding, transcribing every radio show, TV show, ebook, audiobook, national conference, all of our everything. Our Worldview Bible software is now ready. If you go to worldviewtube.com, just look at the bottom right-hand corner. Pops up right there on the bottom. You'll see a little blue box. That's Worldviewpedia. Try it out. We'll be right back.
Consumers often ask, what should I expect when I take the Belly Grace Elixir? And the answer's varied. It really depends on what your health and wellness needs are. I would consider this as your foundational core product for a whole range of health and wellness issues. Let me give you a few examples. If you're a little bit older and you have some joint health issues, some problems with mobility and discomfort, the elixir is going to be your best friend. If you have some skin health issues, wrinkles, hydration, aging, all of those elements are going to be benefited from the elixir, including age spots. Now, if you're in a younger demographic, maybe visual health is where you need some assistance. Eye fatigue, dry eyes, all of those are going to be benefited by the elixir. It's a core product because it benefits so many.
We just heard from Gary, who lives right near McKinney, Texas, and he said, yeah, the people are overwhelmingly opposed to this idea, but the elected officials did not care, as McKinney City Council unanimously approves mosque after hours of public opposition. They are really just taking down Texas, are they not, Dr. Woods?
McKinney situation. I mean, that McKinney, Texas, that's like a Christian, well-known Christian area. It's kind of like how Sugar Land, where I live, used to be a sleepy, conservative Christian area. And now, the city council listens to people for hours, it says, hours of public opposition. And they voted unanimously in favor of this mosque. I mean, there's not even a dissenting vote. I mean, I guess I could handle this a little bit better if it was like a narrow decision, but this is like unanimous. And so, what good is the city council, I guess? Your own constituents show up, they protest what you're about to do for hours, and you sit there and you listen to them, and at the end of the day, you could care less what they're saying. You just do what you want. I think we should circle back to your point that you made a little earlier. Who's paying for these city council members? I mean, where's the money coming from? Is this some kind of George Soros, funded city council? If you follow the money trail, and we talk a lot about the failure of democracy. We talk about a total failure of democracy. This is not even at the state level. This is not even at the federal level. This is at the branch of government that's supposed to be most responsive to the people. We're talking about local government, and here local government could care less what the constituents want, and they vote unanimously against their constituents. And so I think, you talk about the disintegration of America. This is a sure sign of it, is it not?
It is. And if they can take down Texas, they could pretty much take down anywhere, right? I mean, if someone had told you on the evening of 9/11, 2001, the Muslims will end up taking over Texas and building mosques left and right in compounds, 400-plus acre compounds, including one being led by a guy named Yasser Qadi, who has had at his mosque in Memphis here and in Texas, Siraj Wahhaj, an unindicted co-conspirator in the bombing of the World Trade Center in '93, and Texas will be taken over by the Muslims. They would have said, "You're a fool. What are you on? That's crazy talk." No one would have believed that on the night of September 11th, 2001. Texas, of all places, but there it is.
Let me throw something real interesting into the mix here. I just got back from Southern California, and both my wife and myself commented on this. We didn't see a Muslim anywhere. But I come back to Texas, where I live, the Houston area, and they're everywhere. Now, why is that? Well, it's obvious to me why that's the case. California is conquered.
They've already got it. They need the electoral votes. They need the electoral votes there in Texas and Florida.
And so they're going after these deep red areas. And it's not just red states, it's red territories like Sugar Land, Fort Bend County, used to be a conservative county where I live, McKinney, Texas. And so it's a deliberate strategy to change these red states. And what you said bears repetition. If you lose Texas, if Texas becomes turquoise or whatever, you will never, it's mathematically impossible. You will never see a Republican president ever again. And certainly you won't see a Ronald Reagan type of character. I mean, Reagan, the governor of California today, if he were resurrected from the dead, could not become the governor of California. And so you'll never see a Republican, you'll never see an independent leaning type of president like Trump. And, people say, is America mentioned in the last days? Well, America is around. She's not prominent in scripture, but I think she's around. It's just what kind of character is she going to have? And I think the way things are moving, she's just going to become like all of these other nations. Our commitment to Israel will decline. We'll become kind of a socialist, communist type of European style government. And the America that we know today, just isn't exerting any influence in the end times. And so I think that's a plausible scenario that we need to consider.
Michael Reagan passed away, I think, January 4th of this year. And he told me so many times in the last few years, that if his father were running for president in the last few years, he couldn't even get the Republican endorsement. He would not be the Republican nominated candidate. He couldn't even win the GOP over, much less the country.
Wow.
This is how far even the Republican Party has, of course, slid. Here's go to one last article. We're running out of time on the VCY clock. Energy Minister Eli Cohen, Israel can be home to oil pipeline linking Gulf to Europe. This is very interesting because, again, what is it that Gog-Magog coalition is invading Israel for? The Bible says they're treasures. I don't know what fully that means. Gold, who knows? Technology, who knows? Oil, probably. But here you go. Energy Minister says Israel can be home to oil pipeline. Dr. Woods?
Yeah, well, we know that Israel will come back to the land in unbelief. Prophecy indicates that, and she'll become wealthy. And so this situation here that's described in this article contributes to that. But notice also the headline, Gulf states. Actually, not the headline, but the first sentence there. Gulf countries' dependence on oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz could be significantly reduced by a pipeline linking the Gulf to Europe via Israel. And we know that Sheba and Dedan, one of those Gulf states, won't like the invasion. And if she's benefiting along with her neighbors from Israel, that becomes the explanation for Ezekiel 38, verse 13, why Sheba and Dedan, would protest the invasion. So this is like a two-for in the sense that it contributes to the prophetic theme of Israel's wealth, but it also contributes to the theme of the Gulf states protesting the invasion along with the Saudis.
There you go. Dr. Andy Woods, andywoodsministries.org is his website. And Dr. Woods, thank you for being with us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And of course, Dr. Woods is just one of many keynote speakers coming up October 23rd and 24th. That's a Friday night, all day Saturday. We'll be done around 6 o'clock on Saturday night. And so again, full details and to secure your seat. It is free, but you have to have a ticket. worldviewtube.com/events, worldviewtube.com/events. Thank you, Jerry. And stay tuned for Crosstalk with Jim Schneider coming up next.
This has been...
And we're back with the stations that keep carrying us as Jerry vocalizes here, Logan's control room studio dog, who's in the studio giving our studio dog, Dolly, a run for her money. Dr. Woods. Let's go to a couple other stories here real quick. Let's see what else we have on the list. Here we go. Iran targets Trump with more violent billboards and murals across the country. They just are not stopping with the threats against Trump. But yeah, we're told they're ready to make a deal. They're just constantly threatening President Trump and his family and their lives. And yet President Trump thinks these are people that you can make a deal with. I mean, at what point does he just walk away from this? But I guess they need that straight. And of course, the concern is, what if they go and shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait? Can you imagine what would happen then, Dr. Woods? They got two of those.
Terms. But I think he was on his best footing when he was calling them scum and sick, because that's what they are. I mean, these are very warped people. And it's not because they're Persian or Iranian, it's they're warped by a horrible ideology. And I'm not speaking, of course, of every Persian, because most of them hate what's happening. That's why so many of them have lost their lives. But I'm talking about the regime. I mean, their minds are corrupted by this horrible ideology that causes them to act this way. And it's like Nazi Germany. The problem isn't the Germans. The problem is the Nazi ideology, which was corrupting the regime. And so that's what Trump is dealing with. You're not dealing with the art of the deal. This is not a Manhattan real estate deal. You're dealing with scum and very sick people.
Indeed. And speaking of Nazis, which was the Nationalist Socialist Workers' Party, look at this headline from Breitbart. Peter Schweitzer, 1/3 of Democrats now call themselves socialists. 1/3. And of course, many of those are actually not socialists. Many of them are Marxists. You say, what's the difference? What's the difference between a socialist, a communist, and a Marxist? Well, someone, we don't know who said it, but someone aptly said years ago, a socialist is a communist. He's you have your socialist, but a communist is a socialist, but he's a socialist in a hurry. That's what makes him a communist. And a Marxist is a communist, but he's a communist with a gun. That's what makes him a Marxist. And so we really know that many of these socialists are actually flat out communists. Many of them are actually flat out Marxists. They have no issue in using guns to arrest us, to imprison us, to guard us, to take us down. And I don't know unless they slow this thing down a little bit, wait for more people to pass away that are conservative, wait for more conservative voices to be taken out, conservative leaders to be taken out. The more they wait, the better chance they have. If they move too quickly, I do think we're going to see either a civil war in America or a breakup of the country. I just don't think there's too many people here in Tennessee and bordering Arkansas and Mississippi that want to tolerate this at all. Dr. Woods?
Yeah, and you actually saw that in some of the McKinney, Texas situation where somebody, there's a video of it out there, just got in the face of some city council member, saying, what is wrong with you people? What are you doing? And you can see the anger in people building. And I don't preach violence at all. I'm not preaching, I'm not advocating it. I'm just predicting it. People are going to be pushed so far. And when they are pushed to the point where they see no hope, that's when they're going to become violent. And these political leaders would do well to listen to the people, because you're creating, whether they know it or not, this 7-0 vote, unanimous vote. They're creating a quiet revolution by doing things like this.
One of them actually got up, a Muslim. Listen to this clip. He got up and said they're actually going to change the Constitution. So they're telling you what they're going to do, folks. Listen to this.
We will change the United States Constitution with this mosque.
You maybe can't hear what he said, but he said we will change the U.S. Constitution. Yeah. It's interesting. You have a lot of people on the right pushing for a constitutional convention, an Article 5 convention. And now, of course, wouldn't that be an excellent opportunity for the Muslims and the Marxists, the Red Green Axis, to step in and do that? That's why I'm very, very afraid of a Article 5 convention. Dr. Woods, as always, thank you for being with us.
Great to be here. And
guys, if you appreciate what we're doing, we do need your support. Giving drops in the summer. So please go now, will you? WorldviewFoundation.com, WorldviewFoundation.com, and make a contribution of any size, would you? You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Again, I will not be here for Worldview Report or Brandon House Live tonight. We'll run a best of. I do have a quick interview I will share with you on the financial situation that I'm going to film this afternoon and then play tonight at the beginning. Other than that, we'll be back to normal scheduling come Wednesday, all right? As I continue reading through Volume 3 of Revelation. Get your order in now if you want to have it before it sells out, because after that, it could be about 6 weeks before we get the next shipment. WorldviewStore.com, WorldviewStore.com. May God save America. Take care. Here we go. Please get your pre-order in. The commentary, it's done. We finished up all the editing, all the footnotes, all the appendix, all the scriptural references in this will blow your mind. And it's not a cheap book to print. This is hardcover, 2-volume set. It's leather-like, has a leather feel or look to it with gold printing. This is not an inexpensive. We could have done this paperback and gone really cheap. But we wanted to do something that was very professional and classy and historic looking, because this is historic. It's biblically historic. And we wanted something you could put on your credenza in your office or in your living room, built-ins, something that is of great value, and the contents of the page on the pages deserves this kind of treatment. So it's a 2-volume set. It is $125. We were at $99. So any of you that already got your pre-order in, you got a sweet deal. Because we got the bid from the printer, and it is not inexpensive at all because of the quality of the binding, the printing, and the cover, and the gold stamping. In fact, someone said to me, Annie Cyrus said to me, you should make that $125. I said, no, I'm going to do $99. I'm going to go ahead and step on a limb and do $99. Think that that's probably going to cover us for the printing. I would do $125, she said. Well, Annie was right once again. So it is $125. So it's $75 a book. No, that's not $75 a book. That is, some of you are really good at math. You've already done it in your head, haven't you? That's $125 divided by 2. That is $62 a book. But again, each book is about 1,000 pages. Okay? That is not out of the ballpark. Not when you realize what we're paying for each book. So get your order in, because what we have to tell the printer now is how many copies we want printed. And so we would love it if you would get a pre-order in tonight. So next week we can tell the printer what we want quantity-wise. Okay? So please get that in right away. Okay? Worldviewstore.com. Worldviewstore.com. We need your support. This is a great resource for your family. It is a study guide and commentary for lay people. It is written in layman terms. It has a massive index and appendix in the back. This is for lay people. Any high school student could read this and know exactly what it is I'm talking about. I deliberately wrote this for high school through adult. In fact, J.B. Hickson said the other day, Brandon, I don't think there's another commentary out there like this. I said, no, and that's by design. It is think Tom Clancy meets a Bible commentary, because I took the news and the documented stories and I wrapped those stories throughout this book and this commentary to say,